Today, hot employment data, but hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate remained at 3.9% in May 2022, according to the latest data from the ABS, which came out today. Seasonally adjusted employment increased by 61,000 people, or up 0.5%. Weekly payrolls had pointed to a potential decline in employment in May, and actually, given the strong rise in hours worked in April, there was perhaps weakness in the hours rather than the employment, but actually in the end it was neither, with a strong lift in employment being matched by a robust 0.9% gain in hours worked, which followed the 1.3% lift in April. The ABS said the 61,000 increase in the number of employed people in May followed a smaller increase of 4,000 people in April, which coincided with Easter, school holidays, impacts from floods, and ongoing disruptions associated with the Omicron variant. The increase in May 2022 was the 7th consecutive increase in employment following the easing of lockdown restrictions in late 2021. Now, it's worth noting that average employment growth over the past 3 months is around 30,000, and it continued to be stronger than the pre-pandemic trend of around 20,000 people per month. The employment population ratio increased to 64.1% in May. That's an all-time high, and 1.6 percentage points higher than in March 2020. And it was also an all-time high for people between 15 and 64 years old at 77.4%. That's 3 percentage points higher than before the pandemic. Seasonally adjusted hours worked increased by 0.9% in May, following a 1.3% increase in April. In addition to the continuing trend of increasing employment, we've continued to see relatively stronger growth in hours worked. This is something we also saw this time last year before the Delta outbreak, according to the ABS. Despite the increase in total hours worked, though, there continue to be relatively high numbers of people working reduced hours. In line with rising numbers of COVID-19 cases in May, the number of people working reduced hours due to illness continued to be high. This reflected ongoing disruption associated with the Omicron variant and also an increasing number of cases of influenza, the ABS said. The number of people working fewer hours than usual due to their own illness increased in May to around 781,000 people, almost double the usual number for this month. Of those people, around 312,000 worked no hours, which was more than double the normal amount. The increase in hours worked in May would have been even greater had some of these people been able to work their usual hours. With increases in both employment at 61,000 people and unemployment at 8,000 people in May, the participation rate increased by 0.3 percentage points to 66.7%. That is a new record high. For the first time ever, more than 2 out of 3 Australians aged 15 and over were participating in the labour force, the ABS said. This was also a record high for people aged between 15 and 64 years, where it was more than 4 out of 5 people at 80.6% in May. The youth participation rate, those aged between 15 and 24 years, increased by 1 percentage point to 71.9%, and that's the highest since October 1996. The underemployment rate fell 0.4 percentage points to 5.7%. That's the lowest rate since August 2008. And the underutilisation rate, which combines the unemployment and underemployment rates, decreased 0.3 percentage points to 9.6%. That was the lowest level since April 1982. Across the states, unemployment was 3.3% in the ACT, 3.7% in Victoria, 4% in New South Wales and Queensland, 4.1% in the Northern Territory, 4.5% in Tasmania, and 4.6% in South Australia. And the participation rate was 61.4% in Tasmania, 63.2% in South Australia, 66.2% in New South Wales, 66.9% in Victoria, 67.2% in Queensland, 69.6% in Western Australia, 70.7% in the ACT, and 74.3% in the Northern Territories. So in summary, with gains in employment being matched by gains in the labour force, the unemployment rate was flat at 3.9%, a small fall actually at 2 decimal places to 3.86% from 3.9%. And at 3.9%, unemployment is at a record low for the monthly survey, which, by the way, started in February 1978. The last time the unemployment rate was lower was in August 1974, when the survey was quarterly. And it's also worth noting that the ongoing rise in participation is without the normal supply of new workers via immigration, rising participation, meaning the only way to lift the supply of labour is to match the current surge in labour demand. And in May, the labour force modestly outpaced the rise in employment, lifting 68,400, with the participation rate rising to 67.7%. That's a new record high, from 66.4%. At 2 decimal places, by the way, it was 66.66% from 66.39%. So what do we make of all this? Well, firstly, unemployment, of course, is defined as looking for work, available for work. And those employed are at least working an hour. So, as always, there's a little bit of fudge there in terms of defining where we are. The fact that there is still a proportion of people who would want to work more hours than they can work is an important item. But I think the other one to highlight is that given the lack of migration, businesses are desperate for workers, and some of the evidence suggests they may even be offering to pay them a little more, which could be a good thing. But then, of course, that could be inflationary, so that may not be good in the long term. I have the feeling here that the economy, from an employment perspective, is running about as hard as it can get. And my sense is we may well start to see the unemployment rate turning in the other direction as the higher interest rates and the lack of business investment begins to bite. But we'll see. It may be a bit lagged because it does take time for the employment numbers to work through. They are, after all, very much in the rearview mirror. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.